Okay, welcome to another installment of the Minister's Message or Minister's Message. We changed the name a little bit just so that folks didn't necessarily expect to see one every day, although I'm going to do my best to do that, and also maybe shorten them up a little bit and see if I can get them around 7 or 8 minutes. So, thank you for letting me experiment on you. Anyway. Yeah, so this is a pretty steep learning curve for me doing this. So I'm going to read a passage from Luke. I'm not going to read the whole story. It's a familiar one around the prodigal son. But I'll read part of it and then share some thoughts about how this reflects or how this speaks to us today in our current circumstances. So Jesus also told them another story. And once a man had two sons, and the younger son said to his father, "Give me my share of the property." So the father divided his property between his two sons. Not long after that, the younger son packed up everything he owned and left for a foreign country, where he wasted all his money in wild living. He had spent everything when a bad famine spread through the whole land. Soon he had nothing to eat. He went to work for a man in that country, and the man sent him out to take care of his pigs. He would have been glad to eat what the pigs were eating, but no one gave him a thing. Finally, he came to himself, and he said, "My father's workers have plenty to eat, and here I am starving to death. I will go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against God in heaven and against you. I am no longer good enough to be called your son. Treat me like one of your workers.' The younger son got up and started back to his father. But when he was still a long way off, his father saw him, felt sorry for him. He ran to his son and hugged him and kissed him. And the son said, 'Father, I have sinned against God in heaven and against you. I am no longer good enough to be called your son.' But his father said to the servants, 'Hurry and bring the best clothes and put them on him. Give him a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. Get the best calf and prepare it so we can eat and celebrate. This son of mine was dead, but has now come back to life. He was lost and has now been found.' And they began to celebrate." And of course, the story continues on with the conversation between the father and the older son. I mean, this is a big story. It's a complicated story. There's so many things that can be gleaned from it, and but I really just want to focus on one piece of it, and it's about place, about belonging. And so the younger son, it's this amazing, great line where he says, Luke says, "And he came to himself, and he remembered his home place. He remembered his father. He had forgotten all these things for whatever reason. There was a time when he had forgotten his home. There was a time when he had forgotten his father. He'd forgotten where he had come from. He had lost himself. And then he came to himself. Somehow he had been talked out of himself. Maybe, stories of adventure and great places and riches and those stories of far off lands kind of talked him out of himself. He'd forgotten who he was and where he came from, and forgotten that he belonged somewhere and he belonged to someone. Martin Buber is a great Jewish philosopher from the last century, and he observed that the modern mind is a homeless mind, that we are here and there and yet nowhere, and we're not rooted anywhere. We belong nowhere. And so I think there's some truth to that we're scattered. We're seldom present in the moment. We're seldom present where we are. We're always looking at the next place. We either regret the past or we're fearful about the future. And so our minds are wandering and have no place. Homeless, the homeless mind is the modern mind. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Even though Martin Buber was, writing 200 or about 110 years ago or so. And also thinking about Wendell Berry. And so, Wendell Berry is an American writer who talks a lot about place, about belonging, about knowing your neighbor and knowing the land and knowing the face of your wife intimately and knowing that you care about the things that you know deeply. And so I'm wondering about that for us now. The story in Luke asserts that God intends for everyone to have a safe place, for everyone to belong somewhere and to belong to someone. And so the story continues on where the father practically begs the older son to participate in the neighborhood, in the community, in the celebration, to be part of what's happening, to belong. And so we all long for that place that can nurture. And as Christians, as people of faith, I think we are called to make the place wherever we are better, to make it more fruitful, to make it safer, to make it more inclusive and welcoming, whatever that place can be. The place where we can exercise our citizenship and our neighborliness and our friendships. And there's a lot of placeless people. And so God's intention is that we treat even placeless people as our neighbors, and they need a place to belong, to be part of the neighborhood. And so right now, as our worlds get very small, as our place has really shrunk, right? I'm living in pretty much my house to the church, a kilometer in between the grocery store, and then the trails. But maybe this is an opportunity to really engage and know in this place, this safe place, my home and my yard and my neighborhood. Maybe this is a real opportunity to figure out where we belong, to shrink, to not feel closed in by the closeness, but feel embraced by it, to be safe by it, to be nurtured by it. That this small, intimate, known world that we're all living in now is maybe where we belong for now, and the place that we can always return to. Maybe it's the place where our homeless minds can settle and rest and be in God's presence and in the presence of those that we love most dear. So again, we are not alone. We live in God's world, and we have each other, and we have this shared journey that we're on. And so I wish you peace and joy until next time.